By the time October arrived and the leaves began to fall, Halloween fever was already in full swing across the United States during the 1990s. For kids especially, the entire month felt like a countdown to that magical night of costumes, candy, and just the right amount of fear. But what made Halloween even more exciting, year after year, was the music. It wasn't just about what you wore or how much candy you collected. It was about the sounds that filled your classroom, your house, your car, and every party or parade you were part of. Children everywhere were buzzing with a heady mix of sugar, excitement, and the eerie, playful melodies that brought Halloween to life. Nowhere was this more evident than in elementary school classrooms, where teachers often treated Halloween as a highlight of the school year. Decorations would go up by mid-October, construction paper pumpkins, cardboard skeletons, and those unmistakable cotton spiderwebs clinging to the corners of bulletin boards. And somewhere in all of that festive chaos, there would be music playing. Teachers dusted off old cassette tapes or slipped Halloween-themed CDs into clunky classroom boom boxes. And suddenly the atmosphere shifted. The songs were never too scary. These were carefully curated for young ears, but they were just spooky enough to spark giggles and imagination. Meanwhile, pop culture was doing its part to keep Halloween music in the mainstream. Although Michael Jackson's Thriller was released in 1982, it maintained its throne as the ultimate Halloween anthem well into the 1990s. No matter how many years passed, no Halloween was complete without at least one spin of that iconic track. The Vincent Price monologue, the wolf howls, the danceable beat, it all felt like Halloween distilled into 4 minutes. It played in malls, on the radio, at school dances, and on MTV every October, proving that some things really do get better with time. West Coast kids had their own local favorite in Oingo Boingo's Dead Man's Party. Though the band had called it quits in 1995, the track continued to enjoy cult status in Southern California, where frontman Danny Elfman's growing success as a film composer only fueled interest in his back catalog. The song's jittery rhythm and macabre lyrics gave it a spooky yet playful tone, perfect for Halloween parties that didn't take themselves too seriously. And then there was Rockwell's Somebody's Watching Me, released in 1984, but heavily revived by 90s nostalgia and Halloween playlists. With its paranoid lyrics and Michael Jackson's unmistakable hook, it felt tailor-made for the kind of lighthearted creepiness the holiday calls for. Whether blasting from a boombox at a neighborhood party or echoing across a roller rink, it was one of those songs that instantly changed the atmosphere. Suddenly, the room felt just a little more haunted. By the time the mid to late 1990s rolled around, a distinct shift had taken place in the way alternative and rock artists approached the concept of spooky. No longer limited to Halloween novelty songs or classic haunted house sound effects, musicians within these genres began crafting music that, while not always explicitly about ghosts or ghouls, carried a darkness and intensity that made it a perfect fit for the season of shadows. One standout example is the Cranberries' 1994 hit Zombie. Though its lyrical content centered on the political unrest in Northern Ireland, the track's raw emotion, distorted guitar riffs, and Dolores O'Riordan's haunting vocals helped it transcend its origins. It became a staple, not just of 90s rock radio, but of the fall season itself. There was something about its melancholic power that resonated with listeners as the days grew shorter and the leaves began to fall. Smashing Pumpkins, already known for their gothic aesthetic and emotionally weighty music, leaned even further into that territory in 1997 with the release of The End is the Beginning is the End. Originally part of the Batman and Robin soundtrack, the song combined Billy Corgan's signature moody delivery with industrial rock textures and cinematic flair. Its apocalyptic tone and deep, swirling instrumentation made it a standout for listeners who wanted something intense, dark, and just slightly surreal on their Halloween playlists. Even though it wasn't marketed as a Halloween song, its ominous tone made it feel right at home in October. At the same time, Rob Zombie was emerging as a solo artist, having already established his horror credentials as the frontman of White Zombie. With the release of Hellbilly Deluxe in 1998, he solidified his place as the rock scene's reigning ghoul. That album was a full-blown celebration of horror imagery and B-movie aesthetics. Songs like Dragula and Living Dead Girl didn't just reference monsters and death. They reveled in it, blending grinding guitars with lyrics straight out of a drive-in horror flick. These tracks were instantly adopted by haunted attractions, late-night radio DJs, and anyone hosting a Halloween party that leaned toward the extreme. They were loud, theatrical, and proudly sinister. Just what Halloween needed. But Halloween in the 90s wasn't just for headbangers and goth kids. For the younger crowd, and for nostalgic adults alike, Disney and other family-friendly studios provided a gentler soundtrack to the season. Perhaps no contribution was more influential than Tim Burton's The Nightmare Before Christmas, released in 1993. While technically a Christmas movie as well, the film's eerie charm and creepy cute visuals made it a perennial Halloween favorite. Danny Elfman's whimsical yet macabre score, particularly songs like This Is Halloween, brought a sense of childlike wonder to spooky season. The music managed to feel both theatrical and emotionally complex, which helped it bridge the gap between children's entertainment and more adult appreciation for musical craftsmanship. Over the years, its popularity only grew, becoming a gateway into Halloween music for an entire generation. For those who grew up in more niche circles, or who tuned into public radio specials in late October, there was a different kind of Halloween music waiting to be discovered. These were the lesser-known folk pop songs, often performed by regional musicians or local acts, that painted whimsical or eerie scenes with lyrics about goblins, witches, or haunted forests. They usually featured acoustic instruments, gentle vocals, and storytelling structures that made them feel more like spooky fairy tales than pop hits. These tracks often aired just once a year on local stations, making them all the more mysterious and difficult to find again. In today's age of streaming, they remain elusive, passed down not through playlists or algorithms, but through fragile memories and word-of-mouth recollections. For those who heard them as kids, the songs remain lodged in their minds like ghost stories whispered under blankets, just out of reach but impossible to forget. Meanwhile, as the decade progressed and Halloween became more of a cultural event than a single night of trick-or-treating, teens and college students created their own musical traditions. House parties and campus events leaned heavily on music that was dark, edgy, and full of attitude. Marilyn Manson became a particularly polarizing figure during this time. His controversial image, theatrical live shows, and disturbing music videos made him a lightning rod in cultural debates, but also made him a favorite for Halloween playlists. His 1996 cover of the Eurythmics' Sweet Dreams Are Made of This reimagined the synth-pop classic as a slow-burning, horror-fueled anthem. That track in particular, with its distorted instrumentation and unsettling visuals, became synonymous with Halloween in the late 90s. Whether you were blasting it at a party or catching the video during a late-night MTV marathon, Manson's music embodied the kind of menace and mystique that many associated with the season. Across neighborhoods, school hallways, shopping malls, and late-night airwaves, October in the 1990s carried a distinct musical energy that grew more intense with each passing day. By mid-October, it was almost guaranteed that radio stations, particularly the oldies or variety formats, would dust off Monster Mash and give it the annual spotlight it so gleefully demanded. Originally released in 1962, Bobby Boris Pickett's novelty hit had long since cemented itself as a seasonal staple. And in the 90s, it enjoyed a full renaissance thanks to its campy humor and nostalgic appeal. While adults might have rolled their eyes at its ghoulish puns and goofy delivery, kids couldn't get enough. There was something about that voice, that bouncy rhythm, that made it feel like a real Halloween anthem, even decades after it was recorded. It wasn't just Monster Mash that re-emerged every fall. Other novelty classics like Purple People Eater and the Addams Family Theme were resurrected, often included on Halloween party mix CDs and budget compilations available at chain stores like Kmart, Target, and the seasonal Halloween USA shops that popped up in every strip mall. These songs weren't scary in the traditional sense. They were silly, catchy, and perfect for school Halloween parties where fake cobwebs and pumpkin-shaped cookies set the tone. Halloween in the 90s didn't try too hard to be edgy or disturbing. It leaned into the absurd. It was about fun, mischief, and a touch of weirdness. The music reflected that balance, creepy enough to make things feel festive, but lighthearted enough that even the most timid kid could join in. But by the time the decade began to wind down and the new millennium loomed on the horizon, the cultural tone around Halloween started to shift. The holiday became bigger, bolder, and more curated. Parties got flashier, less about homemade snacks and bobbing for apples, and more about fog machines, DJ booths, and themed lighting. Costumes were no longer just simple plastic masks and vinyl smocks from the local pharmacy. Now they were increasingly detailed, creative, and in many cases a bit darker. And the music followed suit. Halloween playlists, once built almost entirely on novelty songs and cartoon-themed songs, started evolving. Music fans began incorporating more atmospheric and moody tracks into their October soundscapes. Artists from the burgeoning trip-hop scene, acts like Portishead, Tricky, and Massive Attack, added a whole new dimension to the Halloween vibe. Their songs, filled with tension, shadowy beats, and haunting vocals, became ideal for dimly lit rooms and late-night drives in the fall. It wasn't just about vampires and werewolves anymore. It was about mood, tone, and subtle unease. These tracks gave Halloween a sense of cool detachment, something that appealed to teenagers and young adults who still loved the holiday, but had outgrown pumpkin songs and silly skeleton dances. At the same time, the era of blockbuster soundtracks was in full swing, and Halloween benefited. Movies like The Crow, Scream, and The Craft didn't just bring horror back into theaters, they brought with them unforgettable scores and soundtracks that doubled as the perfect seasonal playlists. Suddenly, you could pair your costume party with a mix of alternative rock, industrial, and brooding synth tracks that gave the night a cinematic edge. There was a growing sense that Halloween music didn't have to announce itself with howls and cackles. It could just feel like Halloween. Still, even with these changes, the essence of 90s Halloween music was its variety. It wasn't confined to one genre or one tone. It was a chaotic, joyful, slightly eerie grab bag of classroom sing-alongs, eerie ambient compilations, radio pop with ghostly overtones, and the occasional goth anthem. For younger kids, it might have meant jingles about goblins played on a boombox in the back of the classroom. For older kids and teens, it could have been Nirvana's heart-shaped box echoing through a haunted house set up in someone's garage. For parents, maybe it was watching Hocus Pocus on VHS while I Put a Spell on You played in the background. Halloween music in the 1990s captured a moment in time where analog still reigned, where cassettes and CDs were carefully queued up, and everyone had that one spooky album they pulled out once a year. Whether it was a budget compilation from a big box store or a burnt mix CD made by an older sibling, the music stuck with people. It became part of their traditions, and like the candy corn and jack-o'-lanterns and cardboard cutouts of witches taped to classroom windows, it created a feeling that was unmistakably October. Whether your personal memories of 90s Halloween music include dancing to Thriller at a school gym party under flickering lights, hearing a forgotten song about goblins narrated like a bedtime story, or nervously flipping through CD bins with horrifying skull artwork, one thing is certain. Halloween in the 1990s had a sound. It was playful, it was spooky, it was sometimes a little strange, and it was always unforgettable. And even now, decades later, that sound is still lingering, echoing through fall air, buried in playlists, and living on in the memories of those who knew exactly what time of year it was the moment Monster Mash came on the radio.
Come along, let's sing, where the joy will bring. Tune into the beat, feel the magic, it's true. Channel 199 X, we're here just for you, for you.